Listen to others the way you want others to listen to you. It sounds simple enough, but it is not put into practice often enough. My name is Melissa Ward, and like you, I wear many hats. I am a wife, a mother, a business owner, a community volunteer, and I love to play in the snow and travel. And today I am wearing my Rotary coordinator hat, helping to grow Rotary in the 22 districts that make up Zone 32. While I have many hats, I have only one voice. What is voice? The noun that is the sound that comes out of your mouth. The verb is to express something in words. It is the latter definition that we'll be focusing on today. When I use my voice, it is my hope that others listen openly and without judgment. I freely share my perspective, my knowledge and experiences through my voice, with the hope that others can learn from or find some value in those words. But I also listen. I listen as we congratulate each other on a job well done. And just as importantly, I listen to the frustration of others who do not feel heard. Frustration is what is perceived to be closed-mindedness from others when a new idea or concept is presented. We often hear that young adults are our future. To foster that is up to us to listen to the strong, young voices when discussing important community issues. Like you and me, they want to be heard without fear that they won't be taken seriously. By giving them a forum where they can voice their concerns and perspectives and simply open a door, some amazing things can happen. In 2008, Barack Obama reminded us that one voice can change a room. And if a voice can change a room, it can change a city. And if it can change a city, it can change a state. And if it can change a state, it can change a nation. And if it can change a nation, it can change the world. One's voice is the first tool that an individual uses to participate in a community. And it is our job to ensure that voice is heard and acknowledged. Welcome, everybody, to tonight's panel presentation. A few housekeeping items. We're asking participants to post questions in the chat box, but they will probably be addressed at the end of the presentation. And now I have the pleasure of introducing you to tonight's keynote speaker, another person who wears many hats. He is husband and father, and a vice president and regional manager of the Hudson Valley Mortgage Division for M&T Bank. He also happens to be our zone's Rotary International Director-elect, Drew Kessler. Drew is believed to be the youngest RI director ever. A member of the North Rockland Rotary Club since 2001, at the age of 20, Drew has served in all levels of leadership and became the youngest president in their 88-year history at the age of 25. He has been honored with the Distinguished Service Award and the Paul Harris Fellowship. Drew is a past governor for District 7210 and currently serves as the district's Rotary Foundation Chair and as a club innovative advocate for Zone 32. Drew?
Melissa, thank you very much. Bear with me 1 second as I work some technology to get my slides up. And we'll jump right in. Okay. All right. Well, good evening, everybody. First off, thank you so much for this invitation and the opportunity to speak on a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. As mentioned, I joined this great organization when I was 20 years old, and I could spend 10 minutes on how and why and all that fun stuff. But tonight is more about how we engage young people and how we have our organization become relevant to them so we can provide a platform, because at the end of the day, if we are like-minded, from my perspective, it's all about finding platforms to enable people to share in what we experience in Rotary. Being in this organization for the past 20 years, I've spent a lot of time working with young people, young professionals, both inside our organization as well as outside of our organization, focusing on, to me, the key question: how do we stay and become relevant to their demographic? And from a question perspective, it's how do we encourage younger people to join Rotary? What aspects should we emphasize and how? And what techniques should we use to bring Rotary to the attention of these younger people? The first thing we have to do, and while for us it just might be glaring us in the face, we need to demonstrate our proposition statement. What's in it for them? We need to show the leadership skills that come when you join our great organization, the public speaking skills that you can pick up by just simply having $1 in your hand and going to a club visit and spending $1 on Happy Bucks, the opportunity to network, the opportunity for fellowship, and for me, the most important, the opportunity to serve our community, both locally and internationally. But we need to get in front of our potential members and our current members and show them our proposition statement. What's in it for them? It's often thought that young people don't have two main resources: one, time; two, money. And I'm here to tell you that they have both. They have time and they do have money, but they spend both on things that mean something to them, things that they can attribute that's going to help them in whatever aspect they're looking for help in, whether it's growth financially, whether it's growth in network. We need to be able to show them that we can both, our organization can provide this without wasting either, because if we do waste either their time or their money, we will not have a second chance with them. We need to revisit how we train our members. We need to revisit how we even have our meetings and not have potentially 1.5, 2, 3 hour long sessions. We need to give thought to the concept of a TED Talk, which is an 18-minute on-point presentation. Here's all the information, and then obviously we can answer questions and answers. But it has to be fast moving. It has to be fast paced. The concept of a 3-hour lunch to many people in this demographic is just not manageable. This to me is a key concept that really has allowed Rotary to work for me in my life. And it's the concept of not having our members choose between Rotary and work and Rotary and family. Because if we're asking our members to choose, Rotary is going to lose. There's no scenario in which people are going to choose going to a Rotary meeting as opposed to going to a dinner with their family on a Sunday night, or having to give up a couple hours in the middle of their workday. The way I've done it is demonstrated on this slide, in that the key for me is bringing it all together. It's that center point that how do I bring my work into Rotary? So this way everybody knows I'm a banker for M&T Bank. How do I engage my family and have them be part of Rotary meetings? How do I potentially have events in which my family comes to? It's that middle sweet spot that has enabled me for the past 20 years to be part of this organization, and can enable thousands or countless others to be part of it by finding ways to allow our members to bring their vocation into our organization, as well as their partners, their children, and their grandchildren. Here's a novel concept from a club in Southern California that I heard about many years ago. When they have a Rotary meeting, they don't just have 2 rooms, they don't have 1 room, they actually have 2 rooms. And what they do is they go into a restaurant, and on the left side of the restaurant, broken up by a wall, they have their traditional Rotary meeting. But on the right side, they have a kids meeting. They hire an Interact student that watches the kids, if you will, every week. And while the adults are in the Rotary meeting, the kids come together every single week. And I can tell you, it's just that such a little concept that has those Rotarians coming back week after week because they don't have choice. And the reason why they don't have choice, it's not that they can decide whether they want to go to that Rotary meeting and obviously have the fellowship and the networking. They have their kids at home saying, when do I get to go to Rotary next week? Because they know if they don't go to Rotary, they're missing their friends. And that's what it's all about. It's providing platform for a working family to be able to do both. to have a family as well as be part of our great organization. The number one thing we can do when it comes to young people, and it's just attracting potentially members in general, is getting our hands dirty and providing hands-on service projects. Many of our clubs through the years have become more of a check writing institution, and that's okay. But if we're specifically looking for a younger demographic, we have to show ways in which we give back. We have to show ways that they can get their hands dirty and not have to create an entire service project to do so, rather than come join one of ours. The easiest way to invite anybody to our organization is through a service project. Whether it's feeding the homeless, whether it's a Habitat for Humanity build, these are very easy ways to engage somebody into Rotary. And the concept of a no-cost meeting, dovetailing off of the concept of a service project, what better way to invite somebody and not having to have them worry about a $20 lunch or a $30 dinner? Meeting in a public space, meeting in a service project, are all possible ways that we could have these no-cost meetings. When it comes to diversity, people want to be able to see themselves in leadership. Whether it's our club presidents, our assistant governors, our district governors, people want to see themselves represented. Every one of our Rotary clubs should represent the communities in which they serve. Our Rotary clubs should have a little bit of everything. I've never been an advocate for a club having one specific thing. To me, what makes Rotary so amazing is the fact that when we walk through the door, we're all equals. Whether you're 20 years old, 40 years old, or 80 years old, we're all just Rotarians. But people feel comfortable when they're able to enter an organization in which they see themselves, whatever that looks like. I implore everybody that we very much look within our own organization and find ways to bring up all demographics through leadership. So this way, our members, both current and potential, can see themselves in our clubs and our districts. This is a concept that I think falls upon all of us. Far too often, I get asked the question, what is Rotary? And now, for me personally, after 20 years, I think I'm able to answer the question. But for many Rotarians, that's a very difficult thing. But I think that really is incumbent on all of us as Rotarians to get in front of that. See, for many, many years, call it the first 100 years of Rotary International, we did all this great work, but we kind of did it in the shadows. And the concept of what our organization is and what it does really didn't get into the limelight. And what that created is the question now, what is Rotary? Our logo is not synonymous with service. Our logo, if you see it on the side of the street, you don't instantly think Rotary. If I were to show you a Nike symbol, you see the swoosh, you know instantly what company it represents. From an awareness and public image perspective, we have to get in front of this. We have to do everything we possibly can when it comes to service projects and things we do in our community, that our community realizes that it's Rotary that's doing it. Because if we are bringing members in, the last thing we want them to have to deal with is on a Sunday night when they're at dinner with their family, or they're with colleagues at a happy hour and they're all excited to say, hey, I just joined Rotary. We don't want them to get the question, what is Rotary? We want the people that they're around to be just as excited as they are because they understand and know what this organization is all about. Every time we do something, we have to have our logo involved. Every time we do something, we have to make sure we have the public awareness, inviting the newspapers, the radio, the TV stations, whatever it is, to make sure that 20 years from now, everybody in the world knows what Rotary is. And for those who've had the opportunity to travel internationally, there are certain places you can go in this world. And the minute you get off the plane, you see a big Rotary wheel. The hospitals, the bus stops, everything has our logo on it. I bet they don't have to answer the question in those countries, what is Rotary? But unfortunately in the States, we do. And I ask all of you, as we do our projects, to be very mindful of awareness and brand recognition. As we move forward in our organization and try to find ways to engage, again, both young people as well as any demographic, it all comes down to the club experience. And while every club might do something different and have a different way of conducting what they consider Rotary, there should be certain benchmarks when it comes to the club experience that, just like at McDonald's, and I use it as an analogy, no matter where you go in the world, if you walk into a McDonald's, there's a certain expectation you have. Whether that's a good one or a bad one, there's a thought that comes to your mind and what to expect. But what's different is everywhere you go in the world, there might be something slightly different on that menu that caters to that specific demographic or that region or that country or that state. Rotary needs to provide the same exact thing. There should be benchmarks at every single Rotary club you walk into should be a way for you to have local service. Every Rotary club you walk into, you should have fellowship at your fingertips. Every Rotary club you walk into should have the opportunity for networking. How our clubs do that might be slightly different, but the concept is the same. We need to have a certain level, a benchmark of experience that people could recognize and appreciate. Because as it said, we only get one shot, one crack at the apple. If we have a potential member come within our ranks and come to one of our meetings and they don't have a good experience, what are the odds of them coming back? What are the odds that they tell people in the community that they had a negative experience? Whereas if they have a positive experience, the likelihood of them coming back is even greater. The likelihood of them sharing the positive news is even better. So we have to revisit and reimagine what our club meetings look like. We are in such a pivotal time right now as it relates to our current situation. We've morphed a good decade ahead when it comes to how we communicate with one another. And for me, the silver lining is Rotary should never be the same as it was. There are some clubs that might go back to what it was pre-pandemic. But the smart clubs, the clubs that want to make sure that they survive for the next 20, 40, 50 years, are going to find ways to have a hybrid model, to have an online format as well as an in-person format. But what we don't know is how Rotary is going to look like when this is all said and done. But we have the opportunity now to reimagine it and revision all of our clubs. As I mentioned, I've spent the better part of the past 20 years on how to become relevant specifically for younger people. And some of the key takeaways I've shared with you tonight, and I went through it pretty quickly for the concept of the whole TED Talk theory that we want to get through our information as quick as we possibly can and provide and allow time for questions and answers. We're going to have the opportunity right now to be part of a panel and hear what both, I believe, current Rotarians and former Rotarians feel about this organization. And I'm going to ask everybody on the call to be open-minded, to not hold potentially what is said against these people, because we need a transparent look in, because if we can't be self-aware, and if we can't really take a true look at what we're doing, we're never going to be relevant to everybody. And that is the key. How do we provide a platform for all demographics? How do we find a platform for like-minded individuals who share common ideals to allow this organization to continue on for another 100 years? With that, I thank you very much for this opportunity. We are very pleased to have a great panel ahead of me. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Lizzie, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Drew. That was awesome to get us started. You touched on so many things that I know I agree with. And I don't know if Rotarians know this, but there are 38,000 McDonald's in the world and almost as many Rotary clubs. So that puts it in perspective for you a little bit. My name is Lizzie Martin. I'm the Public Image Chair and soon to be Innovative Clubs Membership Co-Chair in District 7150. I'm a past president and current secretary of the Great Baldwinsville Rotary Club. I live in the village of Baldwinsville with my husband, cat, and dog, and I work in advertising for Advanced Media New York, which you probably know better as the Post Standard and Syracuse.com. I am proud to say that I'm a third generation Rotarian. I have two past district governors, my dad and my grandfather in District 7170. And I also have two step parents who are members in District 7120 in the Elmira Heights Rotary Club. And you can tell I'm a millennial because I have my hair parted on the side. It's been an honor to work with my co-moderator to bring together this panel discussion for you tonight. And I can't wait to have you hear this valuable feedback. I hope it inspires positive action in your clubs. I'll now turn the microphone over to Whitney so she can introduce herself.
Thank you, Lizzie. I'm Whitney Pengburn. I am both the president-elect for the Scotia Rotary Club as well as the district Governor nominee designate for District 7190. I'm probably insane for doing as many things as I'm going to take on. I am a commercial health insurance sales executive for Marshall and Sterling Insurance. I have 2 young daughters, and like many of the other young people on this panel, I have a pretty insane schedule at times, just balancing my career, my 2 kids on my own, my volunteerism, which is now mainly Rotary. It's truly been a wonderful experience to be involved in the organization of this program tonight, along with Lizzie. Being able to interview 4 of the 8 panelists that we have, being able to help construct the program has been an experience that I'm going to be very grateful for years to come. I think it's going to be impactful not only on my Rotary experiences, but my professional experiences. And I've had some pretty interesting Rotary experiences. Being able to be an MC at a couple of large Rotary Zone institutes, traveling to Haiti for a water project, jumping on an RV with Jennifer Jones for the Rolling with Rotary 2 tour. It's been quite an experience, all of which I feel has made me better as a person. The incredible impact that all of these things have made to me personally and professionally have just made me a better person, again, in all walks of life. I've really had a passion for, though, trying to blend tradition with new ideas in a collaboration. So not changing everything, but recognizing the diversity and trying to incorporate that into everything that we do to reach our collective goals. Lizzie and I found a lot of common themes among the panelists, areas that we as districts and clubs are doing really well, and conversely, areas in which we could realize some improvement. We identified some of these ideas from our interviews. The more common things we've heard in the past, Drew hit on this, things like time commitment and cost certainly came up in our discussions. However, we did put out a subsequent poll to the panelists on some of the repeat themes. So you'll see within some of these graphics, of the 8 panelists, 4 were attracted to Rotary because of our global presence. And actually, let's make this a bit interactive because I feel like we've all been on Zoom now for a year and it's just a lot going on. So let's assign numbers to these. So sequentially on this page, attracted to Rotary is 1, lacking guidance and leadership roles, which I'll explain, is 2, having close friends in Rotary being 3, and join to get involved or do the dirty work is 4. So no matter anyone's age on this call, I encourage you in the chat now, assigning 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you've experienced any of these things, please enter in the number. If it's all of them, write all. But I would just be curious to see, and since we have the closed captioning on, I'd really like to collect this information afterwards, kind of a breakdown. So I think attracted to Rotary's global presence is self-explanatory, right? This bigger idea. I think I drive my children absolutely crazy because anytime we go anywhere on vacation, I point out the Rotary sign and I'm super annoying about it. But we are everywhere. And to Lizzie and Drew's point, the branding is there. We're just, trying to get in everyone's face. Lacking guidance in leadership roles. So I know I've experienced this and maybe others have as well. You're excited to get involved. You step into a role, but there's not a handbook on how to do it. No one tells you how to get from X, Y to Z. So having that little bit of guidance, whether it is verbal or written, is certainly helpful. Having close friends in Rotary. I think, not every Rotarian gets to go to some of these bigger conferences, and I think it is definitely up to us to foster this leadership. But I think that is where, a lot of us have friends in other countries very easily just from going to one convention. Can certainly change our insight and our impact from Rotary and understand what we're doing at a global level. And join to be involved and do hands-on projects. I think if anyone's seen, any of the young professional statistics out there, young professionals historically are service-oriented. So my hair is also parted to the side, Lizzie. Definitely wearing my millennial tonight. I think it's important to understand that service is a big part of what attracts us. 7 of the 8 panelists had noted to that. So I'm seeing a lot of 3s and 4s. I'm seeing a lot of alls. I'm seeing a lot of 1s. So I feel like this, these things definitely resonate among all of us. So if we push forward to the next slide, basically the last 4 questions, again, cost, I'm not going to elaborate on that one. I feel like we all know what that is, though actually maybe I will. So cost is one thing, right? The cost of the meetings. One of our panelists will elaborate on it, but even just methods of payment can be a barrier to getting someone to join a meeting or attending an event. Big one that came in here, feeling empowered to lead or serve in their own way. So many of our panelists felt like once they were in a role, they were given the ability to put their own twist on how they wanted to do it. If they want to incorporate technology, I know I am making the district governors in 7190 absolutely insane right now because I'm trying to organize everything on calendars and use technology. I was talking with Julie Carney about this a couple of weeks ago. I think it's important to, to try to empower people to use it. And it doesn't matter what age they are, whatever might work for them. Engaging in projects that don't necessarily appeal to new members. So I'll pick on my club for a moment. We have a lot of things we've done just because we've always done them, though it feels more like a duty at this point than something we're energized and excited to do. And I'm not sure if anyone else, but following the theme from before, so we assigned values on the last page, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do 5, 6, 7, 8 here. And the last being involved in Rotary and youth programs. So, a number of our panelists, and obviously we have a small cross section here, came to us because they were previously in a Rotary program. So if any of these have also impacted you, again, 5 is cost, 6 is empowered, 7 and 8. But again, I appreciate you putting the responses in. We'll take a look at this later and just kind of tally these up. I think it will be an interesting thing to see. So with that, I'll hand the microphone back over to Lizzie so we can dive into our program.
Thank you so much. I am very excited to introduce to you all the first panelist for the evening. And Whitney did a great job on that last slide tying it in because Angela Benson, she is from District 7120. She's currently a research assistant for a public health lab in UNC Chapel Hill. And she started in Interact when she was in high school and then helped revive the Rotaract Club at her college. And now she's continued on the path of service above self as president of her Rotary Club this year. Angela, just quickly, if you could unmute and tell us how being in Interact impacted you as a team.
Yeah. So like you mentioned, I joined Interact as a high school sophomore, and it was a fairly large club, like 60 to 100 students at any particular meeting. It was really easy to kind of slip in, pick a corner, and kind of try and fade into the background and just watch. And I remember really vividly that first year watching the president walk around like this huge sea of people and like function and talk and make jokes. And I remember thinking to myself, I could never do that. Not because it was difficult, but because I wasn't capable. And then 3 years later, I was president of my Interact Club, and those 3 years I always think of as like a metamorphosis in like the most like literal meaning of the word, because my work with Interact and with the Rotarians that supported the Interact program really changed like everything. My confidence, my leadership skills, my faith in my own abilities. I, don't think it was much of a growing into myself, but rather like a growing out of myself, out of all the preconceived notions I had about what a leader is and what it looks like and who fits that role. And it was all because a Rotarian saw me and saw my potential. And that was honestly one of the most transformational processes I've ever been through. So
Well, thank you. That was a little bit of like a sidebar for everybody, because when Angela shared the story with me, I just thought it was so important that we know how impactful our youth programs are. And I hope clubs that sponsor an Interact or a Rotary club know that they're positively impacting young lives. And hopefully maybe now some will be inspired to pursue starting a youth organization in their communities too. And I think it's clear, if we do things right, if our Interact and Rotary clubs can be a great introduction to Rotary and create that pathway to membership in adulthood. Angela, can you just share with us a little about your experience? What could Rotary clubs be doing better when it comes to connecting with their youth organizations, and how can we have better follow through on Rotaractors becoming Rotarians?
Yeah, I mean, I think both parts of the question are like intricately tied, right? In my experience, both in Interact and Rotaract, it's been, really just one Rotarian who like was so invested in the community of like young people they were working with, and that it's like a stone tossed in a puddle, like the ripples go on forever. And so if one person is able to do that much, creating a commitment and active investment in youth like organizations, Interact clubs, Rotaract clubs, it really does kind of create a foundation for people to go from Interact to Rotaract to ultimately Rotary, and kind of creating those linkages for folks, for young people to kind of connect with other clubs, and inviting people to come to your like luncheons, and there's so many different strategies to kind of foster those relationships, and that's ultimately what it is that brings people back always. It's that mentorship just changed my life, and it's changed so many people's lives. So I think that's
Thank you. Thank you so much, Angela. I agree. It's all about us being that bridge by building the relationships with the young people, and just making sure that we keep them included. And I'm so glad that somebody did that for you, and you're able to be here with us today, and that you're being a young leader in your district, and we so appreciate you. All right, I hope everybody was taking notes. And if you haven't, then start now. Our next panelist I'm going to welcome also came to us through one of our youth organizations, but this time through being a youth exchange student. Tyler Laurie is from District 7150, and he's a marketing strategist with Johnston, a company that provides food service and cleaning solutions on a very large scale. He joined Rotary once he decided to settle down in his hometown, and his story is a pretty classic one. I think we can all agree our clubs tend to do. We get a new, younger member and we want to engage them, so we give them a leadership role right away. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, because oftentimes these are great opportunities and the kind of development that young people might be seeking in Rotary. But how can we be sure that we're making it a positive experience for these young members being thrown into a new role? Tyler, can you please come to us and unmute and tell us about your experience becoming the membership chair early on, and what could Rotary do to make for a smoother transition in those situations?
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, first of all. I really appreciate it. So yeah, I mean, my experience with Rotary started as a foreign exchange student. I went to Chile as a youth exchange student in the 2009-2010 year. And that was the first time I can remember seeing the power of a local Rotary club kind of in action. I wasn't super involved in my local club beforehand, but I knew that I wanted to go abroad, and it seemed like a great experience. While I was there, Chile suffered their largest earthquake in 90 years. And when that happened, I lost communication with my family for about a week. But through all of that, I actually was reached out to by a local Rotary club in the state of New Mexico. They had found out about me through finding a newspaper article online about my experience. And they actually led a like national fundraising effort to reach out to different Rotary clubs, my own involved in Chile, and purchase generators for the emergency services in a bunch of local towns there. And seeing my local club kind of step up and take the charge in Chile to do that really made me understand at the local level for local communities what clubs can do. And that made me really want to join. It made my family want to join as well. So my father ended up joining our local Rotary club shortly after. I went back and went to college and came back in, and I ended up living and working back in my hometown again recently. And so a little over a year ago, I joined my local Rotary club, and shortly thereafter, I was asked to become the membership chair. I had no idea what the membership chair really was, but I knew I was going to give it my all, and I didn't want to say no. I knew I wanted to give back to my club. Rotary's given so much to me. So my experience has been a good one. You know, I think that people have mixed feelings about being asked to take on a leadership role. You know, though I wanted to take on a larger role, certain people may not. And I feel like my club in particular has a habit of getting these shiny new toys, like you said, and really wanting to put them to work right away. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. I just think that the way we go about it may need to be a little more structured and also a little more freedom bearing as well. So I think it's really important that leadership positions, instead of tossing, you know, people to the wolves, it'd be good to have sort of a mentorship program. In my case, in my local club, that wasn't possible. Our previous membership chair was no longer a member of the club. So I really didn't have a lot of people to turn to outside of the board, who have been extremely helpful, don't get me wrong. But I can definitely say as a young person, I've seen a few experiences where, you know, I've gone about trying to tackle the role in a new way, maybe not the same way that it's always been done. It's been really successful. We've brought a lot of younger members into our club, and I'm really proud of that. But I've also kind of encountered some friction where, you know, maybe something will get brought up in a board meeting and they're like, hey, have you been doing this? And, you know, I never even knew that was something I was supposed to be doing. And yeah, I'm happy to do it, but that may be an old fashioned way of doing things. And here's a newer way to do it. And I think it's good to embrace the new roles. You know, that's why we want to get young people involved in the Rotary clubs, because they can bring new tactics, new ideas. And I think that there's a good balance of providing mentorship and letting people know, hey, this is how we've done it, and also letting them kind of tackle challenges their own new ways and you know, bring a little bit of innovation into the local clubs. I know that my club is on one of the older ends of the spectrum, and it's been really nice for us to get some young blood in there. It's just a little bit of a power struggle sometimes between this is the way it should be done and this is the way we think that we can maybe do it a little bit better. So that's my personal experience, and those are a couple of my suggestions. But you know, I definitely can see how it can be difficult for some young people. But I mean, I know the power of Rotary both at home and abroad, and I think that I'm super happy that I joined. I'm super happy that I'm in a leadership role and I'm making a difference. And I encourage, you know, all other young people that I meet to, if they want to help their communities, if they want to help their global community be a better place, Rotary is the place to do it.
Thank you, Tyler. And we certainly appreciate your tenacity. It sounds like you've had some incredible experiences which have brought you to Rotary pretty quickly early on. And those, I'm sure, are helping you with your leadership role. So thank you again. Next, I'd like to introduce Peter Wilhelm from District 7190. Peter's a new Rotarian, and he's full of energy and enthusiasm. Peter is 24, and he was asked to join Rotary by one of our past district governors. Professionally, Peter is an account executive and handles the radio stations, his clubs, and his clients' social media presence. Like Tyler, Peter thinks we have an opportunity to better prepare new Rotarians with our onboarding experience. Peter, can you briefly speak to some of these points?
Certainly. Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Whitney, for letting me speak. Just as far as the onboard experience, how my experience went when I was approached by Tammy Eckenberg, past district governor. She gave me the opportunity to work with Lake George Rotary Club in District 7190 to not only be hands-on, but also to assume a leadership role in the club and furthermore in the community. You know, so with this being said, as I joined, I wish there was some way that I could have given feedback as far as, you know, age, gender, interest, occupation, and any other questions or, excuse me, criteria that would help the higher ups in the district governor, Rich, or, whatever emails or opportunities like RLI to be brought to me. Most of that, especially RLI, was referred to me by my fellow Rotarians, which I was very thankful for, because I am a strong believer in RLI and the other in the instances of other Rotarians reaching out. But just to better communicate, and I know that all of us get a bunch of emails, day after day. So to not be so bombarded with all this, the emails are nice, but at the same time, to be more efficient with communication, filling out this criteria would help those emails get to the intended person, thus being more effective, and I believe help keeping the Rotarian involved and engaged after the onboard experience. Of course, also asking the expectations of what Rotary, what does your Rotary Club expect of you? Financial contributions, time, all of that, definitely asking before the Rotarian becomes a Rotarian, as well as, as they are starting their journey, what do you expect out of this? What do you want to do? And what do you want to do to help? And I believe that would be, just as far as the onboard experience, sharing the good news as well. New member spotlight. I know times are very different now. We're restricted to, just gatherings over Zoom, maybe small gatherings in person. The opportunity is to use maybe newsletters and social media. Social media, I've been a huge advocate for, and also helping the Rotary Foundation virtual auction, which I highly recommend everyone check out. Just using social media to get the word out, because like Drew had said, we've sort of been a very humble organization. We need to spread the word. We need to get the news out there that, whether it's what we're doing or this new Rotarian has joined us. So myself, when I was posing with past district governor and our club president, Tammy, I could take, there could be a picture taken, which could be shared on the Lake George Rotary Facebook page, which then I could share with my audience, which would help let my friends know that I am a Rotarian now, and let my family know, and ultimately just let people know of the good news. And furthermore, the club projects that we take on, I really believe that that plays a huge role with that person's personal and professional development. And that's pretty much how I believe we could help with the onboard experience.
So you kind of hit on the next question. So we focused a lot on personal and professional development in our interview. Can you expand a bit on what this means to you? I mean, I know you use social media a lot for what you do professionally, but what does that mean with you with relation to Rotary?
Well, just really defining personal and professional development. I believe to achieve that, it's kind of based off of Maslow's theory. So for this, the ability for a Rotarian to be their true self, to be treated fairly, for the individual to build goodwill and friendship while also mutually benefiting themselves personally, professionally, and as well as those involved. And you may have picked up on some of the key points with that being in our mission statement. The, is it true? Is it fair? Does it build goodwill and friendship? And also, is it mutually beneficial to everyone involved? So with that, allowing Rotary industry leaders, in my industry, someone who could be an industry leader is Jason Brown. Jason Brown, when I first had heard him speak and saw his content, I immediately reached out right away, and I would have never had that opportunity unless I was a Rotarian. On top of that, webinars and videos. So maybe how-to videos, such as how to host a Zoom meeting, how to post on social media, how to reach out to these different not-for-profits and whatnot. And we already do that with Rotary, because as far as our club, we fund, scholarships, we fund food banks. It's really, and we like to partner with other organizations. And as far as how that pertains to personal and professional development, along with the guidance of your fellow Rotarians, reaching out to that organization that you strongly support, being able to facilitate even a small Zoom meeting. As I had done in January, I brought together just people in my community who are business owners, who are industry leaders, and letting them tell Rotary what they're all about, and giving them the opportunity to all of us possibly working together. And that plays into the personal development as far as, growing the leadership role, as well as the professional role, professional development. as becoming more established in your career, in your community, and overall, just that's, I believe, how we could help Rotarians not only retain them, but also help them personally develop and professionally.
Thank you, Peter. That was awesome. I do think that's a real benefit to being in Rotary that we should talk about more, and we should broadcast a little bit more. So thank you. And thank you for doing the social media for your club. That's so important. If anybody's wondering, at the half, SU is down right now versus Duke. So just an update for everybody. And we're almost halfway through the panel. So I just want to remind everyone too, if you have any questions that you'd like panelists to expand on later, or for Drew or for Whitney or myself, please put those in the chat and we'll be taking those at the end of the panel discussion. Next up, we have a Rotarian who is in Rotary because community connections are important to his profession too. Darnell Hayes is from District 7150, and he is the Eastern District Vice President of the YMCA here in CNY. His feedback for us tonight is something I hope you can really truly hear. He first joined Rotary when he took a role at the YMCA in Rhode Island, and because his YMCA was already linked to Rotary there, gave him a natural place to network and make connections in his new community. There's a group of members in that club who were active and vibrant and fun, and they welcomed him right in. He really enjoyed his time there. After relocating to Central New York, and still with the YMCA, he sought out another Rotary club to join. And unfortunately, his experience hasn't been quite as welcoming this time around. Darnell, can you tell us more about your Rotary experiences and what you think could be done to remedy that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me. This is important. It's an important conversation, and the work to improve upon all of our experiences takes intention. And if we're intentional about about doing the work and about making sure that people feel included and welcome, that will make us all make our clubs a lot stronger. To your point, your recap on my experience, it's interesting because similar, not unlike some of the others, I had an assumption of what my experience would be before I joined Rotary, and that assumption was of kind of the stereotypical sit and have a lunch and kind of go about your business afterwards, and that's been the case in some clubs and not so much in others. My experience in my first Rotary club was fun, right? It was fun. It was engaging. It was intentional engagement. It was a focus around service, but it was a focus around really enjoying one another and that fellowship and finding ways to connect inside and outside of Rotary. They would go on golf trips and they would go on just family trips with one another. So it was more of a family. It was more of a family, and it was intentionally. It was folks intentionally working to build relationships, genuine relationships. Kind of fast forward to present day, we've got a strong club who does a lot of good community service work, but that work towards being intentionally connected and that work towards simply having fun. I've got a young family that I've got to decide at times whether I'm going to show up to a meeting or show up to a service project, and if I don't think it's going to be fun, I'm probably going to stay home, right? So finding ways to make sure that it's fun, that it's engaging, that hasn't always been the case, right? But there's still on a positive note, I've got the optimism of there's a handful of individuals who are really intentional about saying, hey, Darnell, these are things that we've got going on. Hey, these are things that we'd like you to be a part of. This conversation is one example of that. If we can make it fun, we can be intentional about those community connections, those opportunities for doing meaningful work, and building those genuine relationships. I say this all the time at the Y, but I say this all the time just in general conversations. everything that we do is built upon relationships, whether they're strong or not. When you have the stronger relationships, you get a little bit more grace from one another, and you get a little bit more support from one another. So finding those things that will help us connect and help us strengthen those relationships are things that I look forward, I lean to, and I try to find within any club that I've been a part of. And going back to where we started, there's been a contrast, right? And the contrast has been that relationship, that intentionality, and just being intentional about making the work and making those connections meaningful.
Thank you, Darnell. Really appreciate you sharing all of that, and very happy that you had such a strong and positive first Rotary experience, which has maybe given you a little bit more grace with us in the second go around. You're a very impressive individual, and I'm glad that you have been part of our panel. Our next panelist, Jim, I think can echo some of the same. As clubs, and I think Darnell hit it right on the head, we need to be intentionally welcoming. So Jim works as a union organizer for NYSIT within District 7190. Jim has a gorgeous family. He has 2 little boys that are both still young. And I want to personally say thank you to Jim for getting on and sharing his story. Jim and I became fast friends back in 2016, which was not too long before Jim decided to actually leave Rotary. Jim got very involved in Rotary, and very quickly, soon after he joined, he became the president of a new young professionals club. He then went on quickly to become assistant governor, and this is all in less than just 4 years. Jim, can you briefly give us some input on your experience as an AG?
Absolutely. First, thank you for having me tonight. It's really inspiring to see how many people have shown up on the Zoom. It's refreshing. I had started with the Capital Region Rotary in, 2012, I want to say, and I became AG in 2015. Somebody had stepped down and nominated me. I was very excited about the opportunity and the role of moving forward with Rotary. And I hit a lot of roadblocks in that first couple of months, going to different clubs. I got introduced, and that's about where it ended. There wasn't really a lot of space for conversation or discussion where we were going as a district. And being part of what was termed, the young professionals, we were really trying to move the needle to do meetings that weren't so mandated, having a different form of communication, a different type of due structure in the sense of what we should be spending our money on and when. Part of the reasons that I came into Rotary was I was asked, because the Interact Club and the foreign exchange program was really interesting to me as a new father. I thought that was just a wonderful opportunity, and I learned a lot of the history about what Rotary has actually done internationally, which was even more exciting to me. But what I found very quickly in my role as AG is things are done the way they have always been done. There was not a lot of openness for change. There wasn't a lot of dialogue. I would like to also just piggyback off of what my other peers have said about mentorship. There wasn't a lot of that when we came in and when we formed. I think everybody was trying to do the best that they could. I saw somebody in the chat wrote something about Rotary.org has this whole space about new member orientation. We were never privy to that. There was just a lot. We found that like the RLIs, I was only able to attend one because it required travel and money, neither of which I had at that point to see that. And there was no way for me to make that ground up because it was mandated, right? You have to go to an RLI. And that's what I was told. So I just believe onboarding and mentorship would do Rotary a ton of good here in the Capital District.
Thank you, Jim. Good points. Part of the Rotary website is that a great point is that there is so much information, but the downside is that there's so much information. It's hard to find and it's hard to know what's there. We also spoke in our interview about some of your really good experiences while in Rotary, including you led a community project. You helped work on the district level next gen event that we had, though you spoke about how important it is for the club to work as a team and to not let one voice guide the club decisions. Can you just elaborate on that just a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. It was my experience that it was kind of a one-party rule. We did certain service projects that wasn't really voted on. It wasn't really discussed. It was kind of determined. When I became president, just to give more history, I didn't just become AG. I served as secretary. I stepped up as secretary within 3 months of joining Rotary, and then I became president. When I became president, you were tasked with doing something to make your mark, so to speak. And I fell in love with service before self. It's why I was interested in Rotary. And we crafted a safe scare for the Troy YWCA, which is one of the few YWCAs that still house women and their children who are victims of domestic abuse and are looking for a new start. And so what we did was we created a haunted house, a safe scare. And we brought in Troy Police Department and resources and pumpkin carving and all of that. That was such a great project for me. I love Halloween, so it was kind of a natural fit for me. We were able to do it the following year on a much smaller scale. And I didn't feel that when we reached out to other clubs, they were receptive or willing to help in any capacity, not with money, not with information, not with contacts. And that was really disappointing to me because it is supposed to be service before self. And I just felt that I was hitting a lot of roadblocks to do good work. And it boggled me.
Understood. Well, thank you, Jim, for sharing the experiences. I think there's definitely ways that we can streamline some of our processes and get the right information to the right people. And hopefully we'll have the opportunity to have you back someday. I will never give up on trying to get you back.
Thank you.
So thank you again for your experience there. Next, I'd like to move on to Matt. So Matt shared a similar experience in that there was one particular event. Sorry, I'm a millennial and my reminders for my daughters are going off. Okay, so his similar experience was that there was one person that was guiding decision in his club regarding a large expense. Just a bit about Matt. So he's also a very impressive individual. He's the director of, let me not screw this up, the Cortland Area Communities That Care, where he focuses on large community challenges. So first, Matt, can you just briefly explain a bit more about that particular board experience?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Whitney, and good evening, everyone. And so, when Whitney interviewed me, I kind of was pretty honest with her about the experience. I mean, I almost quit Rotary over this experience because I was just a little turned off by what I thought was some lack of transparency on the part of the board about a pretty large financial decision that was really being guided by one member. And I just didn't really feel like this was in the spirit of what I thought our club was about and what Rotary was about. And so, it ended up resolving itself, but I really took some time away from Rotary. I stopped attending meetings for a period of months and kind of reflected on, is this something I want to continue to be investing my, kind of going back to our keynote speaker, my time and money into? Like I'm a really busy person. Is this something I want to continue being a part of? Kind of the resolution for me, I came out of it deciding I wanted to be even more involved. So I came back to Rotary, at which point I decided to volunteer to be, vice president and president-elect. And now I'm going to be, our incoming president for the next year. But it was just an interesting experience to see, I think, the resistance sometimes of Rotary members to challenge other members. You know, I think we're all volunteers. We all try to live the Rotary mantra, and sometimes that leads to us not, you know, really just challenging, what is this the right decision that we're making? You know, are we really doing what's best for our club here? And so that was a little frustrating for me. You know, but as I said, the way my personality, the way I decide to solve things like that is to get even more invested, which is what I've done.
And we're very happy that you are. So also in our review, we focused a bit on your passion for solving bigger issues together as clubs, as districts, and maybe you can elaborate on that, but also just tell us a little bit about some of the funny little things that we talked about that make it difficult for some young people to join meetings or be involved in Rotary. Can you just share some of those things?
Yeah, sure. You know, when I look at my Rotary Club or just any Rotary Club, you know, I see more than people who can write checks and people who can paint walls and give out food and kind of do those hands-on things. Those things are really important. But I see a lot of leaders in our communities that if we, you know, came together in collective action, could make a big difference in our local communities the same way we do on the global level. You know, one of the things that got me involved in Rotary was a global grant that actually was, you know, done in our district. It wasn't in Haiti or some other far off country. It was done at the local level and really brought together local Rotary leaders that were solving this big issue, which was, you know, trying to wrap our heads around the opioid epidemic. This is a big community issue that we all, you know, can to address with. So I see Rotary, you know, all of this brain power and people with all these different backgrounds, you know, we could really be invested in solving large scale problems at the local level, outside of just doing, you know, hands-on volunteer work and writing checks and giving away money. Again, those things are important, but you know, that's what really drew me to Rotary, was the possibility of, you know, being in the same room as all these people that I won't normally get to interact with, and just figuring out, you know, how can we work together as a club to be invested in the community. And I think that would go a long way as well, going back to, you know, the Rotary logo and getting people to understand what's Rotary about. Like, we need to be out there helping to get people to understand what Rotary is about, not just, you know, slapping our logo on things. That's important, but also like living that in the community every day as well. And to your second point about just the small quirks of Rotary, you know, being a millennial, and, you know, some of these things might sound silly, but, you know, a lot of my work is around behavior change. Like, how do I get people to change their behaviors around health? And one of the biggest things we focus on is, if you want someone to do something, you have to make it as easy as possible for them to do that thing, right? And so just small things that over the years I've noticed with mostly, you know, it hasn't been a problem virtually, but when we have in-person meetings, you know, lunch, I have to remember to have cash for lunch because I never have cash. So I've had to go to ATMs just to go to a Rotary meeting. And that might sound like this really small thing, but if I have to do that every single time, there's times I'm like, I can't go to a meeting because I just don't have time to stop at the ATM beforehand. And so I don't go. And it might sound like this really, really small thing. You know, our club is, I think, trying to address that by embracing some technologies like Venmo and, you know, different, you know, cashless payment options. The same thing is like around checks. You know, these days, Rotary is like the only thing I write checks for. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't write a single check in my life other than to Rotary. And when they ask for a check, like if, you know, there was an easy way for me to pay, they would get the money instantly. But if they ask for a check, it might take me months because then I have to get stamps and mail, and that's a whole thing. And again, this might sound like silly, but if we're putting a lot of these small barriers in place, especially for young people, we're giving them reasons to say no rather than giving them reasons to say yes.
When you and I talked about that, I thought I 100% agree with you, and it's so funny. And then we brought it up in our pre-panel discussion, and most people agreed. I thought, you know, we really should address this. You know, I was presenting to Julie Carney's club a couple of weeks ago, and I was thoroughly impressed because they set up a Venmo for their happy dollars, and I was able to just send my $5 without having to write out a check. Same. I only have a checkbook for Rotary expenses. I never use my checkbook for anything else.
That's the only thing I use it for these days.
Yes.
And I'm running out of checks.
Yeah. Okay. So as we're talking about some of those small barriers, and thank you, Matt, some of the similar topics did come up with Patrick. So Patrick, if you can unmute a bit about Patrick. So he's a financial advisor with Edward Jones in District 7170. Patrick was actually in Kiwanis when he lived in the Rochester area. When he moved, he was looking for a way to get involved again and form some new friendships, new business contacts. Patrick is married and he does have young children whom he also likes to get involved in Rotary. Patrick, can you just tell us a bit more about how some of these Rotary ways or traditions have impacted your Rotary experience? And as a follow-up to that question, do you have any advice for how a Rotary Club can position their expectations of new members to help make sure they are all on the same page and that lead them in the right direction?
Absolutely. And thank you, Whitney and Lizzie, for inviting me to be here and speak tonight. Also wanted to reach out and say thank you to Matt Adler, our district governor, who I know he's in my club and has been instrumental in my success with Rotary. Going back to why I joined our club, and I'll be honest, I have been spoiled. Our club supports, is flexible. They know we have young kids, and it means so much that they want them there. They've been to luncheons when school gets canceled. They've been part of service projects. They're always encouraged. And if that weren't the case, I can tell you, it would make it so much harder to participate in all these things. So I'm so grateful that our club is so open to it, and they're so willing to adjust and change. And they've shown that flexibility with similar membership gatherings and letting the younger people in our club get together and talk about how can we make the experience better. So, you know, it's all those things that just really keep us coming back. My wife has since joined the club. And, you know, I chuckle at the comments about the hair part. I'm in a micro generation. I'm not really a millennial. But she's explained TikTok to me and what it means, so I get it. But ultimately, you know, things are changing and we need to adapt and adjust with it. My piece of advice, and it touches upon really what Drew spoke about in the keynote and what a lot of the other panelists have talked about, it's communication. And it's understanding and trying to figure out and make sure we're being clear with what Rotary is today. We need to communicate the changes that we've made, that we're not the club that so many people just think is, I go to a meeting and get penalized because I was, you know, spoke out of turn or said something I shouldn't have, or showed up 5 minutes late, or I was in the news and somebody saw me, so I get to pay $5 extra. It's not just dependent on financial support anymore. It's that all encompassing, hey, if you can do it financially, great. But we really want you as a member because of all the other things you bring to the club as well. So if we can start communicating that better to not just, you know, people outside the club, but people in the club, our existing members, so they understand what we're all trying to do, and they can reach out to people that they know that would be great members, we can bring them in. And then for our new members, it goes back to just setting those expectations up front. As they're getting to know the club, as they're being, we'll say, interviewed, they're interviewing us, we're interviewing them. Talk to them, yes, about the history of the club and about the organization, absolutely, but also focus on what do we expect from them, and are they able to meet that commitment, and just be clear. And if they're not meeting some of those expectations, don't go radio silent. I saw in one of the chats when Matt had mentioned, you know, he was gone for a few months. He didn't go to meetings. Did anybody reach out to him? Did he have an opportunity to speak? Was the communication there or no? And that's why I think it's so important that if we can be better communicators, we're going to increase our membership, we're going to increase our engagement, we're going to be able to do more. And I really appreciate the flexibility that not just our club, but our district and Rotary as a whole, I've seen the willingness to accept that things are changing, and I'm excited for where we're headed and some of the things that are going to be adjusted in the future.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you very much for sharing. I'm so glad that you found a great club that's flexible and welcoming, and your wife joined as well. That's awesome. I do think communication that sort of helps explain to people a club's culture is very important, to make sure you're managing expectations right from the start. And we do definitely have those unspoken or unwritten rules in our club about, what we expect of our members. And we really need a lot of self-awareness if we're going to try to objectively assess how those might come across to people, and make sure that we're being appealing to that younger audience. Next up, we are going to welcome our final panelist for the evening, Kelsey Holland, and she is joining us from District 7120. Kelsey is a commercial PNC sales agent at Paychex and a charter member of her home club. Her feedback on how to make Rotary appeal to young people also touches on club culture, and it's a message we've heard before. We've heard it tonight. Drew touched on it, and that is that young people are people of action. Kelsey, can you please unmute and share with us all the truth behind how young people prefer to serve?
Yes, of course. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I am so happy and honored to be able to share a part of my Rotary story with you all. So I first became involved with Rotary my freshman year of high school when I joined the Interact Club. I quickly became involved in that club's leadership for all 4 years of my high school. And in turn, I had attended a fair amount of my local Rotary Club's meetings. While attending, the impact the club was making on both a local and international scale was amazing and undeniable. But one thing about their approach to service stuck with me then and still sticks with me to this day. And that thing was the quick and steady willingness of the Rotarians to write 1, 2, or more checks throughout the meeting to various causes. But then when it came time to sign up for an in-person event, the sign-up sheet would go unfilled. And as young people in Rotary, that doesn't work for us. Most of us have not gotten where we want to be at career-wise or financially. And while we are not where we want to be at career-wise or financially, we are still busy as heck and out there living our best lives. We are traveling for the first time. We're getting married, adopting dogs, having children, and saving up and buying our first homes. And although at this time, we may not be able to financially support all of the causes that we are so passionate about, we still do have that burning desire to do good for our communities and help those less fortunate than us. So the question, of course, is how do we make Rotary work for young people? And in my opinion, this is by providing those hands-on volunteer opportunities to have our members make an impact that doesn't always involve finances. Over the past few years, I have had the extremely fortunate opportunity to help charter a club in my district, as you guys heard, based off of that service model. I mean, we've literally had people in dumpsters breaking down boxes before and installing a cement driveway for a Habitat for Humanity house and working on the Food Link farm to help them produce fresh food for children and families in need. We're also always actively looking for new charities and causes to support, further getting our name out there and meeting new like-minded people along the way. We have even added new members by going to new organizations, volunteering there, and then talking with their existing volunteers about Rotary and the work we do. And then in turn, inviting them to attend one of our meetings to see firsthand what we're all about. And we can officially attest that this approach has been working. In the last 4 years, we have been able to get 50 new young people involved in Rotary that were currently not involved or had actually never even heard of Rotary before. So my message to you all is that I encourage you to create more hands-on events for your members and get your clubs involved not only in the causes that you've been amazingly supporting each and every year, but also be open to new causes, because that will only open up doors for you guys and expand your influences in your communities. Also, as it was mentioned before, brag about your work and be proud of it. Young people love seeing social media posts about those in need getting the help that they so deserve. Lastly, be open to change within all aspects of your club. Times are definitely changing, and when young people see Rotary changing along with it, they won't want to miss out on that. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Kelsey. That was awesome advice and a perfect segue into our final quick review, touching on some of the things that each of the panelists shared with us tonight. And this document with the information that Whitney shared earlier, and then these action items will be made available to everybody. So you can take this back to your club. And I'm just going to go very quickly to reiterate what our awesome panelists have shared with us tonight. First, we talked with Angela, and connecting with Rotary Youth is just the perfect pathway. We already have these organizations that we can sponsor in our communities for teens, college students, young adults, and bring them right into Rotary. Give them a great Rotary experience before they're even Rotarians, and they'll be more likely to want to continue in our organization. We want to give our young leaders guidance, but loosely. They want to be able to make their positions their own, but they also need to know what to expect or what Rotary expects of them, whether that's through mentorship or having an opportunity for them to shadow in a role before they assume it, whatever that looks like. But just make sure you're letting them bring in new ideas and not be left hanging. Having a really good orientation program, or as some of us were calling it, onboarding program, to help new members acclimate. I mean, really, this is good for new members of any age, but especially for young people who might feel like they're the only ones in the group. You want to certainly make sure that you bring them in, possibly have a mentor or buddy system in your club if you don't already. And you always have your district membership chairs as resources to help with building out a new program like this, or maybe improving on the one you have. Darnell touched on this for us, and I think it's so important. I know in our district, we talk about it at our district training assembly pretty much every year, but you really have to put effort in and work hard to create an environment in your club that's welcoming, that recognizes an unfamiliar face and goes out of their way to greet them. That invites people in. When I spoke with Darnell, he kind of likened it to, when you're a kid in the cafeteria and, you walk out with your tray full of food and you don't know where to go to sit. And it would be so nice if somebody invited you to sit with them. That's little things that can really make a big impact on somebody's experience in Rotary. Encouraging teamwork is a great way to avoid having that overpowering voice that might turn people off to our clubs. But if you do have that overpowering voice, I know, as was mentioned, sometimes we're a little too nice and we just want to be positive and be working together. But if somebody's overpowering in your group, you should find respectful ways to address that, or you could lose members over it. You definitely want to bring your club into the 21st century. And again, as mentioned tonight, COVID kind of made us do that with all being here on Zoom. So there's other things you can do though that will make your club look like it's modern and hip and with the times, and that'll make it more appealing to young people and bring down some of those little barriers, which can all add up to be big barriers to being an engaged member. And finally, we want people to be people of action. I mean, that's what Rotary International wants us all to be as well. And people want to spend their time productively when they're volunteering. And that's something I think we know we can do well if we put our minds to it, and that there's a lot of opportunities out there. So there's some guidance here on where maybe you could get some new inspiration or ideas for those hands-on clubs. I just want to thank all the panelists tonight. I think you guys are phenomenal. It's been such a joy. I also interviewed 4 of you, and it was so cool to get to meet you all. I've been in Rotary for 12 years now, so I don't feel much like a young Rotarian anymore, but just knowing that you guys are kind of coming up in that same path you're all so impressive to me. So thank you. Whitney, did you want to have any closing remarks before we take questions?
Just echo the same, Lizzie. It's been an incredible experience, which I know we kicked off with. Thank you very much to all of the panelists. I know that getting in front of a group and sharing maybe some, some areas where we can improve on is not always the easiest thing to do. And I certainly appreciate all of you taking that time to do that. So with that, we do have some time for some Q&A. So I will pass it over to Melissa Ward to get us kicked off.
Well, thank you. Really great discussion and excellent feedback from all the panelists. I know that I've appreciated listening to some of it, and particularly thankful for your action items. So it gives me something to be able to bring back to my club, to be able to put into action right away. So the first question is for Drew. Is Drew here? After hearing from these panelists, would you give any input on the best practices for how any Rotarian can address club members who are unwilling to make even small changes and perhaps are certainly not welcome to new ideas?
Yeah, unfortunately, and thank you for the question. Unfortunately, this is something we face in not just Rotary, but in our daily lives, right? We're always going to come up against people who are just set in their ways and are not open to change. I mean, the only thought or suggestion I can make, and it's really just more about change management and building collaboration, is to have those Rotarians or individuals understand that for the future of our organization, we have to find ways, right? And while they might not want their world changed, they just have to be open to the world around them changing, whether that's a satellite club or not getting in the way of a new club starting. We're never going to be able to change everyone's perspective or have everybody be open to what maybe is to come. The thought here is that we slowly, find a way and shift to be more open to everybody. So I don't know if I directly answered the question, but the thought here is we want to find a way for collaboration and just work with people from a change management perspective.
Thank you, Drew. This question is for Angela. How long between when you were in Rotaract and from the time that you joined Rotary, and who invited you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I made a very quick transition to my Rotary Club after graduation. It was really like a couple of months, but it doesn't feel like a very hard distinction because I was already going to their clubs as a Rotaractor. So it was very, very easy. And my advisor, Lisa Norwood, and my other advisor, Glenn Saraslotti, they were both part of the Rotary Club that I'm in now. So I guess it was really natural. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Matt, it was asked if someone from your club reached out to you to ask, why haven't we seen you for several months? And how did the club learn about any of the issues that you encountered?
Yeah, so one person I spoke to a lot, there's the person who recruited me to Rotary. I'm a fellow Rotarian who I'm really close with, has kind of served as a mentor, and she and I had a few conversations where I voiced some of my frustrations, and she listened and just kind of told me to take some time and reflect and decide what the best course of action was. And then in terms of sharing it, I was on the board when at the time that decision was made, and so I expressed all of my feelings were heard in that way. That wasn't really the issue. So I definitely was able to express some of my concerns, and really the issue I think did kind of linger long enough where some other people also voiced some concerns about it, and it became more of a club issue. So that's kind of how things settled themselves.
Great, thank you. Let's see, there was a question for any panelist who wants to respond. What is your elevator story when somebody asks you what is Rotary and why you are a member? This individual relies on youth exchange stories, but feels that does not always resonate with people. Just leap right in.
I'll jump in on that. I think that the biggest thing I can say outside of my own youth exchange experiences is that locally, I've seen the impact that things can have on my community. And the one, 15-second speech that I have is, I was a young member who joined because of ties to my family and ties to things they've done for me in the past. When I got in, I saw how many different organizations we were helping locally, and organizations that I didn't even necessarily know were there. And I realized very quickly how in the midst of this pandemic and things that have been going on, we had to quickly change our old-fashioned ways and move into new forms of fundraising, new forms of communication, new forms of recruitment. And being a young person to join Rotary and help out with that seemed to be very valuable for the club, and it was very rewarding for me. So that would be my pitch, is that, you know, you can make an impact right now and your impact is needed.
That is perfect. Thank you. Yeah, Rotarians, I think, sometimes underestimate the impact that one individual can have on somebody else's life. So that was quite profound. Thank you. Kelsey, what are some actual examples of hands-on events you've been a part of?
Yes, thank you. I noticed some of my friends chimed in as well, but I did mention a couple of things that we've done, including Habitat for Humanity, when we helped to install a cement driveway. I can't believe they actually let us help out with that, but it was really fun and a great experience. We've worked on both the Food Link farm and in the Food Link warehouse, which is this massive operation, of course, that supplies food to a lot of students and families in need all throughout the state of New York. We've done open door mission where we've served dinners. We've served dinners at the Ronald McDonald House here in Rochester as well. We've done Flower City Pickers at the Rochester Public Market that sorts basically the food that can't be sold in a storefront. We sort those versus like what can still be eaten as edible versus what actually needs to be thrown out to then be donated. So those are a couple of examples of the hands-on things we've done.
So Evan just asked, what about ongoing service projects versus one-offs?
Yeah, we have actually a healthy mix of those as well. I believe we do open door mission at least once every couple months. Ronald McDonald House we did as well before the pandemic, at least once every couple of months. I think we're going back to Habitat for Humanity for our third time this upcoming Saturday. And then we do have, of course, some events that just come up as one-time events, but there's a healthy mix of both of those.
Thank you very much. I guess I'm going to suggest, because it's 8:29, so I don't want to keep people over. If any panelists or if the moderators are willing to answer questions after this event, if you want to share any of your contact information in the chat box, please feel free. I think that most people, the districts that you're in, they probably know how to get a hold of you, but a lot of great ideas have been shared here tonight. A lot of, I'm going to call it constructive feedback has been shared. And I greatly appreciate everyone's time in putting this together. And thank you both to Whitney and Lizzie for all the hard work, and for each one of our panelists for sharing your Rotary experience, for better or for worse. We will be able to learn and grow and become a better organization because of what you've shared tonight. So thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I wish you a fond evening. Bye.